Public sector demonstrations seem to have slowed down after a Labour court interdict yesterday. Essential services were ordered to go back to work after days of striking for a 10% wage increase. Let's check in now with our reporter, Nqobile Madlala in Durban, about the situation at eThekwini regarding this public service strike. Good afternoon, Nqobile. So what's the situation like in and around Durban? We've seen here, at least in Johannesburg, like the non-essential staff in some government departments are on strike and services are affected. But hospitals, following days of trouble, are calmer today as essential workers have returned to work.
Well, Bridan, I think that's the great news coming out today, is that those hospitals, clinics that have been needing that calmness are finally receiving that. I mean, we ourselves saw from Wamashu at the CHC where the community clinic was now functional. You'll remember yesterday we found ourselves even having to assist some of those patients that needed assistance. So we have seen a sense of calmness in those areas. We have seen nurses helping people. We have seen some of the health workers continuing like it was normal. But after so long, Bridan, of no service, you can imagine the sort of backlog that they now have to work with so many people that needed to get their pills and so on. But it was a bit different, though, from where we were standing, because we also went to KwaDabega, where we found some of the nurses still outside. The reason being, Bridan, they were basically blocked by a private security. We were then told, or rather the leaders said to them, that it seems the private security was coming from higher up at the district level. It went on to say that it potentially could be HOD of health that had sent those securities. But why they were sent there, they were being told that they were worried about the government infrastructure. They didn't want it being destroyed. But in KwaDabega, we saw that even in the entrance, there were still some areas that were quite burnt. So it seemed that there was either a protest or something that got out of hand. And of course, as a result, then they had to get that heavily armed security to come in and sort of assist. So the workers did eventually get a chance to go in, even though the CEO also said he didn't know where these heavy security in his space, where they were coming from. We eventually saw the workers going in to assist some of those people that needed assistance. But when we went to Pinetown, which is courts, now we found the non-essential workers, Bridan, and those non-essential workers were still striking. They, of course, being briefed by some of the leaders here in KZN, saying to them that they are waiting to hear what will happen in those negotiations, which we have been told that they're currently ongoing behind closed doors. They said that once they've been given an outcome in terms of what would be the way going forward, if they are getting those few percentages that they have been asking for on top of the 3% that they've already been given, then they will give a mandate to the non-essential workers to now possibly go back to work. But they were spelling it out, Bridan, saying that they will be expecting the non-essential workers to go back to work within 24 hours of the decision. So if the decision comes out today, that means by tomorrow they are going to be back to work. It's essential, though, Bridan, to just remind you that this decision, remember, will only be spelling out what will happen with regards to back pay in this point, because the fight between the government, of course, and Nahau is the fact that government gave them 3% in the 2023 to the 2022 to 2023 bid. And so they're saying that they don't want the 3% that was imposed on them. You'll remember when the negotiations are ongoing, Bridan, it's very important that they get to a deal where everybody is happy with that. And unfortunately, that deal didn't happen. And so the government found themselves in a position where they gave them 3%, saying that that's where they are willing to go. The 2023 to 2024 negotiations, however, are currently still ongoing, Bridan, where we find unions like PSA. We know that most of the unions that are negotiating for the next percentage that the workers must be getting are expecting to find a decision in the next day or so. And we know that it's 53% of those unions that are currently negotiating for the 2023 2023 to 2024. However, Nahal then seems to be lagging behind at this point, mainly because they're still talking about 2022 to 2023, meaning they're still going to go into conversation about what will happen with regards to the next level. But for now, they're still wanting that 10% increase, which we understand that it was sitting at 3% that it was provided by government. And right now, they're still wanting that 2,500 Rand, which will be for housing. And we do know that by the 15th of March, which is tomorrow, the 1,000 Rand gratuity that was given by government to the workers now falls off. So even though there are still strikes ongoing in some of these parts, Bradan, really the negotiations are what will be mostly important for the workers, because that will spell out also how their money, what will look like post the strike. You will remember that government has already said no work, no pay. And no work, no pay, Bradan, means that they still have to have that money taken out of their pay, and that money being deducted from their pay. That's something they still need to be ready for. And already they're crying over the cost of living, which then has become very important for the workers to understand why it's important to then protect the collective bargaining, because this is where they get the percentages, and that becomes easier for them.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive wrap there in terms of the impact of this ongoing public service strike in and around KwaZulu-Natal. We'll have to wait and see what the negotiations will produce. Meanwhile, the public